Katie Sullivan wiped the sweat from her forehead as she checked the nutrient levels in the hydroponic tanks. The lights in the growing bay cast a soft green glow across rows of vegetables and grains. She had been working on the Meridian Dawn for 6 months now, tending to the plants that would feed the 847 colonists on their journey to New Terra. It was simple work, quiet work, and exactly what she needed after the chaos of Earth. Her younger brother Danny sat nearby, his legs swinging from a bench as he played a game on his tablet. The 10-year-old looked up at her and grinned. "Katie, when we get to New Terra, can we get a dog?" Katie smiled. "Maybe, if they allow pets in the colony." "They have to," Danny said with the confidence only a child could have. "Everyone needs a dog." Katie was about to respond when the ship's lights flickered. She frowned and looked up at the ceiling. The light stabilized, but something felt wrong. A low vibration ran through the floor, different from the usual hum of the engines. Then the alarm started screaming. Red emergency lights flooded the growing bay. Katie grabbed Danny's hand and pulled him to his feet. "Come on, we need to get to the safe room." They ran toward the corridor, but before they reached the door, the entire ship shook violently. Katie stumbled and caught herself against a tank. Water sloshed over the sides, soaking her uniform. Danny cried out as he fell to the floor. The ship's intercom crackled to life. "All passengers, this is Captain Morris. We are under attack. Proceed to emergency stations immediately." "This is not a drill." Katie's heart hammered in her chest. "Attack?" They were in deep space, far from any known conflict zones. She helped Danny to his feet and they rushed into the corridor. Other colonists were already running, their faces tight with fear. An explosion rocked the ship. The lights went out completely, replaced by dim emergency lighting. Katie could hear metal tearing somewhere above them, a horrible screeching sound that made her teeth ache. "Katie, I'm scared," Danny whispered, clutching her hand tightly. "I know, buddy. Just stay with me." They made it to the nearest safe room, a reinforced chamber designed to protect passengers during emergencies. About 30 people crowded inside, parents holding children, elderly couples clinging to each other. Katie found a corner and pulled Danny close. Minutes passed like hours. The ship shuddered again and again. Then everything went silent. The sudden quiet was somehow worse than the noise. The safe room door exploded inward. Katie threw herself over Danny as debris flew through the air. When she looked up, her blood turned to ice. Standing in the doorway were creatures she had only seen in warning broadcasts. Vraxians. They were massive, easily 7 feet tall, with gray-scaled skin and faces that looked like a cross between a lizard and something from a nightmare. They wore dark armor that seemed to absorb light, and each carried weapons that hummed with energy. One of the Vraxians stepped forward. It spoke in a harsh, clicking language that hurt Katie's ears. A small device on its chest translated the words into English. "All humans exit the chamber. Resistance will result in immediate termination." No one moved. The Vraxian raised its weapon and fired at the ceiling. A beam of purple energy punched through the metal, leaving a smoking hole. Several people screamed. "Now," the creature said. They had no choice. Katie stood slowly, keeping Danny behind her. The colonists filed out of the safe room into the corridor. More Vraxians waited there, along with what looked like dozens of other captured passengers from different sections of the ship. Katie's mind raced. The Vraxians were an empire species, known for their obsession with warfare and combat. They conquered other races, either enslaving them or forcing them to join their military. Humanity had avoided contact with them so far, staying in the safer regions of space. That safety had just ended. The Vraxians began separating the colonists into groups. Most were herded toward the cargo bay, but several Vraxians walked through the crowd, studying people carefully. When one stopped in front of an older man and grabbed his arm, the man's wife screamed and tried to pull him back. A Vraxian struck her with the back of its hand. She flew backward and hit the wall, blood streaming from her nose. "No resistance," the translator said coldly. Katie felt Danny trembling against her back. She squeezed his hand, trying to send him strength she didn't feel. A Vraxian approached them, its yellow eyes scanning Katie from head to toe. It moved past her and relief flooded through her for a moment, then it grabbed Danny. "No!" Katie didn't think. She just reacted. She threw herself at the Vraxian, grabbing its arm with both hands.
"Let him go."
The creature looked down at her with what might have been surprise. It was like a child trying to stop an adult. Katie's fingers couldn't even wrap around its armored forearm. but she held on anyway, pulling with everything she had. Another Vraxian approached, this one with more elaborate armor and scars across its face. It studied Katie with interest, its head tilting slightly. "This one has spirit," the scarred Vraxian said through its translator. Its voice was deeper, carrying authority, small but defiant. "Commander Zarketh," the first Vraxian said, "should I remove her?" Zarketh stepped closer to Katie. She didn't let go of the other Vraxian's arm even though her muscles were starting to shake. The commander reached out one clawed finger and lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You challenge me, human female? You think your small strength means anything?" "He's just a child," Katie said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Take me instead." Zarketh made a sound that might have been laughter. "You offer yourself for the young one? Interesting." He gestured to the other Vraxian. "Release the child." "Take her." "No!" Danny screamed. "Katie." "It's okay," Katie said quickly, even though it wasn't okay at all. "Danny, listen to me. Stay with the others, be brave. I'll find you, I promise." Rough hands pulled her away from her brother. She watched Danny disappear into the crowd of colonists being led toward the cargo bay. Tears streamed down his face, and Katie felt her heart breaking. She was dragged in a different direction, along with about 20 other humans. Katie recognized a few faces. Lisa Grant, who had been a security officer on Earth. Marcus Chen, a teenager who had won medals in track competitions. Henry Walsh, an elderly doctor who had been traveling to New Terra to retire. They were taken to a small holding cell deep in the ship. The Vraxians threw them inside and sealed the door. The cell was barely large enough for all of them to sit down. There was no food, just a single container of water. Lisa sat against the wall, her face blank with shock. Marcus was crying quietly. Henry tried to check on people, his doctor instincts taking over even in captivity. Katie slid down to the floor and wrapped her arms around her knees. Her whole body ached where the Vraxians had grabbed her, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the fear eating at her insides. What would they do to Danny? To all the colonists? What would they do to her? Hours passed in the dark cell. No one spoke much. Finally, Henry moved next to Katie and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That was very brave what you did for your brother," he said softly. Katie shook her head. "It didn't matter. They took him anyway. You showed them that humans protect their own. That matters, and does it?" Katie looked at the sealed door. "We're trapped. They destroyed our ship. We're at their mercy, and from what I know about Vraxians, they don't have much of that." Henry was quiet for a moment. "I've lived a long time, Katie. Long enough to know that how we act in our worst moments defines who we really are. You acted with love and courage." Hold on to that, Katie wanted to believe him, but as she sat in that dark cell, hungry and scared and separated from the only family she had left, courage felt very far away. All she could do was close her eyes and pray that somehow, some way she would see Danny again. She had no idea that her moment of defiance had caught the attention of Commander Zarketh. She had no idea that the Vraxians had plans for her, and she had absolutely no idea that everything she thought she knew about herself was about to change. Finally, Techmore went limp. Katie held on for another few seconds to make sure The cell door opened with a hiss that made Katie jump. She had been drifting in and out of sleep, her body exhausted but her mind too anxious to rest properly. 2 Vraxian guards stood in the doorway, their weapons ready. "All humans exit now," the translator device commanded. Katie stood on shaky legs. They had been given no food, only enough water to keep them alive. Her stomach cramped with hunger and her mouth felt like sandpaper. Lisa helped Henry to his feet while Marcus moved toward the door. The Vraxians led them through corridors that clearly weren't part of the Meridian Dawn anymore. The walls were darker, made of some metal that seemed to drink in the light. Strange symbols covered the surfaces, and the air smelled different, like ozone and something else Katie couldn't identify. They emerged into a massive bay where dozens of other prisoners stood in groups. Katie saw species she had never encountered before. Some looked almost human, while others were so alien she couldn't tell which end was the head. All of them looked terrified. Through a viewport, Katie could see they were no longer in space. They were docked at some kind of station, a huge structure that stretched out in all directions. Lights dotted its surface like stars. "Where are we?" Marcus whispered. "Crawl Station," a voice answered. Katie turned to see another human, a man with a scarred face and hollow eyes. He wore torn clothing that might have once been a uniform. "You're in the Vraxian testing grounds now." "I've been here 3 months on testing grounds?" Lisa asked. "What do they test?" The man's laugh was bitter. "They test if you're worth keeping alive." Before Katie could ask more, the Vraxians began moving the prisoners forward. They were herded through another set of doors into a preparation chamber. The room was filled with cages and medical equipment that looked more like torture devices. A Vraxian handler stepped onto a raised platform. This one wore different armor, marked with symbols that might have indicated rank. When it spoke, the translator turned its clicking speech into cold, clear English. "You have been selected for combat evaluation. The Vraxian Empire seeks strong species to join our ranks. The weak serve in labor camps. The strong earn better treatment and a chance at life. You will fight or you will die. There is no third option." Katie's blood went cold. Combat evaluation. They were going to make them fight. The handler continued. "Winners receive medical care, food, and improved housing. Losers who survive learn their place. Losers who do not survive teach the others a lesson. You will fight our warriors. You will fight creatures from across the Empire, and you will fight each other if commanded. Resistance is death. Cowardice is death. Your worth will be measured in the arena." The room erupted in panicked voices. Some prisoners began crying. Others shouted in languages Katie didn't understand. The Vraxians fired their weapons into the ceiling, and the noise stopped instantly. "First group enter the preparation area," the handler said. Guards began selecting prisoners. Lisa was chosen first from their group. She shot Katie a frightened look as they dragged her toward a different chamber. Marcus went next, his face white as paper. Henry was passed over, probably because of his age. Katie watched through a transparent wall as Lisa was shoved into a smaller room. They gave her no weapons, no armor, nothing. Then a door on the opposite side opened. Beyond it, Katie could see an arena. It was hexagonal, with walls that rose up at least 30 feet. Seating surrounded it on all sides, filled with Vraxians who cheered and made sounds that hurt to hear. The floor was dark gray metal, scarred with marks from previous fights. Lisa stumbled into the arena, shading her eyes against the bright lights. A Vraxian warrior entered from the other side. It was young. Katie could tell by its smaller size, probably only 6.5 feet tall, but it still dwarfed Lisa. The fight was over in less than 2 minutes. The Vraxian was too fast, too strong. Lisa tried to use her security training, but every move she made was countered. The warrior grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. Katie heard Lisa scream even through the walls. "Yield!" Lisa shouted. "I yield." The Vraxian released her and stepped back. The crowd booed. Guards entered the arena and dragged Lisa out. She was alive, but her arm hung at a wrong angle. They dumped her in a corner of the preparation chamber where other injured prisoners lay. Marcus went next. They released something into the arena with him. A creature that looked like a massive dog but with 6 legs and teeth made of something that glittered like crystal. Marcus ran, using his speed to stay ahead of it. He made it almost 5 minutes before the creature cornered him. It slashed his leg open with one claw. Marcus screamed and fell. Katie thought the creature would kill him, but instead it just stood there watching him bleed. The crowd roared with laughter. Finally, guards came and removed both Marcus and the creature. They threw Marcus next to Lisa. More prisoners fought. More prisoners lost. Some died in the arena, their bodies dragged away while the Vraxians cheered. Katie felt sick watching it. These were people, living beings with families and dreams, and the Vraxians treated them like entertainment. "Human female, you are next," a guard said, pointing at Katie. Her legs didn't want to move. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything but walk toward that arena. But there was nowhere to run. The guard's weapon was pointed at her back. They pushed her into the preparation room. The door sealed behind her. Katie's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She could hear the crowd beyond the arena entrance, their alien voices mixing into a wall of sound. The door opened. Katie stepped into the arena, and the noise hit her like a physical force. Thousands of Vraxians filled the seats, all of them focused on her. The lights were blinding after the dim corridors. She raised a hand to shield her eyes. Across the arena, another door opened. A Vraxian warrior stepped out. This one looked young too, eager to prove itself. It carried no weapon, which meant this was supposed to be hand-to-hand combat. The Vraxian was named Tekmor, though Katie didn't know that. What she did know was that it was huge, covered in scales that looked like armor and had claws that could tear her apart. A horn sounded, signaling the start of the fight. Techmore charged immediately. It covered the distance between them in seconds, much faster than Katie expected. She stumbled backward, barely avoiding a swipe that would have taken her head off. The crowd roared with approval. Katie kept backing up, her mind racing. She had no training for this. She was a hydroponics engineer. She grew plants. She didn't fight alien warriors in front of screaming crowds. Techmore lunged again. This time Katie tried to dodge to the side, but the warrior anticipated the move. Its hand caught her shoulder and sent her spinning. She hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. "Get up," something inside her screamed. "Get up or die." Katie rolled to the side just as Techmore's foot came down where her head had been. She scrambled to her feet, gasping for air. Her shoulder throbbed where the Vraxian had struck her. Techmore was playing with her now, taking its time. It probably thought this would be over quickly, just like Lisa's fight. Just like all the others. But something was happening to Katie. As Techmore charged again, time seemed to slow down. She could see every movement the warrior made, could predict where its hands would go before they got there. Her body moved without her thinking about it, ducking under a grab that should have caught her. The crowd's cheering changed tone. Surprise mixed with the bloodlust. Katie's vision sharpened. She could see details she had missed before. The slight limp in Techmore's left leg, the way it favored its right side, the fraction of a second delay before it changed direction. Her body felt different too, lighter and stronger at the same time. Techmore came at her again, but this time Katie didn't just dodge. She moved into the attack, using the warrior's own momentum against it. Her hands found Techmore's arm and she twisted, throwing the Vraxian off balance. It worked. Techmore stumbled, confusion clear on its alien face. The crowd went silent. Katie didn't understand what was happening to her. She only knew that her body was responding to the threat in ways it never had before. Every muscle seemed perfectly coordinated. Every breath came exactly when she needed it. Her heart pounded steadily, not with panic but with focus. Techmore roared and charged with real anger now. But Katie was ready. She watched it come, saw the pattern in its movements, and waited for the exact right moment. When Techmore reached for her, Katie dropped low and swept its leg. The warrior crashed to the ground. The arena erupted in shocked voices. No one could believe what they had just seen. A small human female had put a Vraxian warrior on the ground. Katie stood over Techmore, her chest heaving but her breathing still controlled. Something had awakened inside her, something that had been sleeping for her entire life. She didn't know what it was, but she could feel it burning in her veins. Techmore tried to get up. Katie didn't let it. She moved faster than she thought possible, getting behind the warrior and locking her arm around its thick neck. Techmore struggled, its superior strength trying to break free, but Katie held on. Her muscles burned and her arms shook, but she didn't let go. She squeezed, cutting off the blood flow to Techmore's brain, a technique she didn't even know she knew. The warrior's struggles grew weaker. The crowd Commander Zarketh descended from his viewing platform, his heavy boots clanging against the metal stairs. The crowd parted for him as he made his way to the arena floor. His eyes never left the small human female standing over his unconscious warrior. Katie watched him approach, her body still thrumming with whatever had taken control of her during the fight. Her hands were steady now, no longer shaking. The fear that had consumed her in the holding cell felt distant, replaced by something sharper and colder. Zarketh entered the arena and walked toward her slowly. Katie stood her ground, though every logical part of her brain screamed that she should run. The commander stopped a few feet away and studied her the way someone might study an interesting insect. "You did not kill him," Zarketh said through his translator. "He was unconscious," Katie replied. "Killing him would have been murder. This is the arena. There is no murder here, only victory and defeat." Zarketh tilted his head. "Yet you chose mercy. Why?" "Because I'm not like you." The crowd hissed at her words, angry at the insult to their commander. But Zarketh made a gesture and they fell silent. He leaned closer to Katie and she could smell something sharp on his breath. "No," he said quietly. "You're not like us. You are something else, something we have not seen before." He straightened and addressed the guards. "Take her back to the holding area. Give her food and water, medical attention if she requires it. Katie was grabbed by 2 guards and hauled out of the arena. As they dragged her past the preparation chamber, she saw Lisa and Marcus being tended to by what looked like medical staff. Henry was trying to help, but the Vraxians kept pushing him away. They took Katie to a different cell, this one slightly larger and cleaner than the first. They shoved her inside, and a moment later, a tray of food slid through a slot in the door. Katie stared at it. The food looked and smelled alien, but her stomach growled with hunger. She forced herself to eat slowly, not knowing when they would feed her again. As she ate, her mind tried to process what had happened in the arena. She had moved in ways she never knew she could. Her body had responded to Tekmor's attacks with precision that seemed impossible. It was like someone else had been controlling her, someone who knew exactly what to do. But it had been her. She remembered every moment, every decision. She just didn't understand how she had known what decisions to make. Hours passed. The door opened again and the guards returned. This time they took her to a different part of the station. The corridors here were wider, more elaborate. They stopped at a room filled with screens and data terminals. Zarketh stood in the center, studying a holographic display. When Katie entered, he dismissed the guards with a wave of his hand. "Come here, human," he said. Katie approached cautiously. The holographic display showed images of Earth, rotating slowly in the air. Data scrolled along the sides in the Vraxian language. "I have been researching your world," Zarketh said. "The Vraxian Empire has largely ignored Earth and its people. You seemed insignificant, weak. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your bodies are small and fragile. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no claws or fangs." He looked at Katie. "Yet you defeated Tekmor. Explain this." "I don't know," Katie said honestly. "I've never fought anyone before." "I'm not a soldier." "What are you then?" "I was a hydroponics engineer. I grew plants on a colony ship." Zarketh made a sound of disbelief. "A farmer. We sent a farmer into the arena and she defeated a trained warrior." He turned back to the display. "But perhaps that is not so strange. Your species has a unique history." He manipulated the display and images changed. Katie saw ancient humans running across vast plains, chasing animals that were larger and faster than they were. She saw humans climbing mountains, crossing deserts, exploring frozen wastelands. "Your people evolved on what we would classify as a death world," Zarketh said. "High gravity, extreme weather, dangerous predators everywhere. Most species that evolved in such conditions became apex predators, strong and fast and deadly. But humans took a different path. More images appeared. These showed human anatomy, highlighting specific features. Zarketh pointed at them with one clawed finger. "You have an unusual cooling system, this sweating mechanism. It allows you to run for hours without overheating. Your legs are designed for endurance, not speed. Your bodies can metabolize a wide range of foods, allowing you to survive in almost any environment. And your minds, they have a peculiar ability to push your body past what should be its physical limits." Katie watched the display, fascinated despite herself. "I don't understand what that has to do with the arena." "Everything," Zarketh said. He pulled up more data. "On Earth, your ancestors were persistence hunters. They would chase prey for days, never stopping, never resting until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. The prey was faster and stronger, but humans simply refused to quit. They would track wounded animals across impossible distances. They would survive in conditions that killed other species, not because they were the strongest, but because they were too stubborn to die." He turned to face Katie directly. "That is what I saw in the arena today. Tekmor was stronger than you, faster than you, better trained than you, but you adapted. You learned his patterns in the middle of combat. Your body entered a state of hyper-focus that allowed you to overcome every physical disadvantage. And when you had him beaten, you still had enough control to choose mercy over killing." Katie's mind raced. "You're saying this is normal for humans? That we can all do what I did? I do not know. That is what I intend to discover." Zarketh gestured and the door opened. "You will face more challenges in the arena. I need to understand the limits of human capability. If your species is as formidable as I suspect, the Vraxian Empire will need to reconsider its approach to Earth. And if I refuse to fight, then you will die along with all the other humans we captured, including the young male you tried to protect." Zarketh's eyes glinted. "But I do not think you will refuse. You are a survivor, Katie Sullivan. It is written into every strand of your genetic code." The guards took her back to her cell. Katie lay on the thin mat they had provided and stared at the ceiling. Her body ached from the fight, but the pain was manageable. What bothered her more was what Zarketh had said. Was she really just following ancient instincts? Was the person who had fought in that arena even her? Or was it some primitive part of her brain taking over? Days passed and became weeks. The Vraxians brought Katie to the arena regularly, sometimes every few days, sometimes twice in one day. Each time the challenges grew harder. They put her against multiple opponents. She learned to track all of them at once, to predict their movements and turn them against each other. Her body adapted, growing stronger and faster. Muscles she didn't know she had began to show beneath her skin. They released creatures into the arena with her. Some were poisonous, others were armored, all of them were deadly. Katie learned to read their behavior, to find weaknesses in claws and fangs, to use the environment against them. She discovered she could go without sleep far longer than she thought possible, could function on minimal food and water, could keep moving when her body screamed at her to stop. The other human captives received better treatment as word of Katie's victories spread. The Vraxians began to see humans as potentially valuable, not just as slaves, but as something more. Lisa's arm was properly healed. Marcus received training in combat. Henry was allowed to work in the medical facility, treating injured fighters from all species. But Katie remained the focus of Vraxian attention. Zarketh watched every fight, taking notes, studying her like a scientist studying a new discovery. Sometimes he would send warriors to fight her with specific instructions, testing her responses to different strategies. Other times he would change the arena environment, adding obstacles or hazards to see how she adapted. Through it all, Katie felt herself changing. The terrified woman who had been dragged from the Meridian Dawn was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who understood that survival meant never giving up, never stopping, never accepting defeat. She began to understand what Zarketh had meant. She wasn't fighting like a Vraxian warrior, trading strength for strength. She was fighting like a human, using endurance and adaptation and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. When opponents expected her to tire, she kept going. When they thought they had her beaten, she found another option. When they gave her no weapons, she made the arena itself her weapon. The Vraxian crowd started to change too. At first they had booed her victories, angry that a weak human could defeat their warriors. But slowly, grudgingly, they began to respect what they saw. Not because Katie was the strongest fighter, but because she never gave up. Even when injured, even when bleeding, even when any reasonable being would surrender, Katie Sullivan kept fighting. One night, after a particularly brutal fight against 3 Vraxian warriors at once, Katie sat in her cell and examined her reflection in a piece of polished metal. She barely recognized herself. Her face was thinner, harder. Scars marked her arms and legs. Her eyes had a quality she had never seen before, something fierce and unbreakable. This was what humans were beneath the civilization and technology, she realized. This was what evolution had made them. Not the strongest species, not the fastest or most deadly, but the ones who simply refused to stop. The one 3 months after Katie's first fight in the arena, the Vraxian Empire sent observers from across their territory to Crawl Station. Word had spread about the human female who defeated warrior after warrior, who survived challenges that killed champions from a dozen other species. They came to see if the reports were true. Katie stood in her cell doing the stretches that had become part of her daily routine. Her body had changed dramatically. Lean muscle covered her frame now, and scars marked her skin like a map of survival. She could feel the difference in how she moved, more fluid and controlled than before. The door opened and Zarketh entered, followed by 3 other Vraxians she hadn't seen before. Their armor was different, marked with symbols that suggested high rank. "These are military advisors to the High Command," Zarketh said. "They have traveled far to assess your species. Today's challenge will be observed and recorded for the Imperial Council." Katie met his eyes steadily. "What do you want me to fight?" 3 of our elite soldiers simultaneously. They are fresh, well-rested, and motivated. You have been fighting regularly for months and are already tired. Zarketh tilted his head. "The advisors believe this will show your limits. I believe it will show them what I have been trying to explain." They took her to the arena. The crowd was larger than usual, packed with Vraxians eager to see the famous human fight. Katie stepped onto the arena floor and immediately assessed her surroundings. The space was empty today. No obstacles or cover, just flat metal under bright lights. 3 Varaxian warriors entered from the opposite side. Katie recognized one of them, a female named Sarkana who had been training with some of the human captives. The other 2 were unknown, but their movements showed confidence and skill. The horn sounded. Katie didn't wait for them to organize. She charged immediately, targeting the warrior on the left. The Varaxians expected her to be defensive, to conserve energy against 3 opponents. By attacking first, she disrupted their formation. The warrior she targeted raised its guard, but Katie wasn't aiming for its head. She dropped low and swept its legs, using its own defensive posture against it. The Varaxian fell hard. The other 2 converged on her. Katie rolled away, came up running, and led them on a chase around the arena. To the observers, it might have looked like she was fleeing. But Katie was doing what humans had done for millions of years. She was making them work, making them expend energy, making them tire. Sarkana was fast and tried to cut her off. Katie changed direction without slowing, her endurance allowing her to maintain speed while the Varaxians began to breathe harder. She could see it in their movements, the slight lag as fatigue set in. 5 minutes into the fight, Katie stopped running. She turned and faced them, her breathing steady despite the constant motion. The Varaxians were panting now, confused by her tactics. "Come on," Katie said quietly. They attacked together, coordinated and professional. But Katie had been watching them the entire time, learning their patterns, understanding how they worked as a unit. When Sarkana came from the left, Katie knew the second warrior would try to flank right. She moved into the gap between them, forcing them to adjust their attack. The fight became a blur of motion. Katie used every technique she had learned, everything her body could do. She wasn't stronger than them, but she was faster in the ways that mattered. Her reactions were quicker, her endurance was deeper, and her mind calculated possibilities even as she moved. 10 minutes in, one warrior made a mistake. It overextended a grab and Katie caught its arm, twisted, and used its momentum to throw it into Sarkana. They went down in a tangle of limbs. The third warrior roared and charged. Katie met it head-on, ducking under its reaching hands and striking at nerve clusters she had learned through trial and error. The Varaxian's leg buckled. By the 15-minute mark, all 3 warriors were down. Not dead, not even seriously injured, but defeated. They lay on the arena floor, exhausted and beaten by a human who still stood, who still had energy left, who looked like she could keep fighting for hours more. The crowd was silent. Even the advisors stared in disbelief. Zarketh entered the arena and approached Katie. He studied her carefully, then turned to address the advisors in their own language. The translation device on Katie's collar picked up some of it. "As I reported," Zarketh said, "extraordinary endurance, rapid adaptation, mental resilience that exceeds any species in our records. The human female has fought 47 challenges in 3 months. She has never been defeated." One of the advisors stepped forward. Its armor was dark blue, almost black. "One specimen proves nothing. It could be an anomaly. We need more data." "I have more data," Zarketh replied. He gestured and guards brought Lisa, Marcus, and several other humans into the arena. "I have been training the other humans. Watch." Over the next hour, Katie watched as her fellow captives fought in the arena. Lisa faced 2 Varaxian warriors and held her own for several minutes before being overwhelmed. Marcus fought a creature with 6 arms and managed to survive by outlasting it, letting it exhaust itself while he kept moving. Even Henry, the elderly doctor, was brought out to demonstrate human problem-solving skills in a puzzle challenge. The advisors watched everything with growing concern. After the demonstrations ended, they gathered with Zarketh in his observation room. Katie was brought there too, still catching her breath from her fight. "The evidence is clear," Zarketh said. "Humans are persistence predators from a high-gravity death world. Their bodies are optimized for endurance rather than raw power, but more importantly, their minds refuse to accept defeat. I have tested this female against impossible odds and she finds ways to survive. This is not an anomaly. This is what humans are." The dark-armored advisor turned to Katie. "You, human, why do you continue to fight? You could choose death. It would be easier than this endless combat." Katie met its eyes. "I fight because my brother is somewhere in your labor camps. I fight because there are 847 humans from my colony ship depending on me. I fight because giving up isn't an option." She paused, And I fight because every time I win, you have to reconsider what you think you know about my species. Arrogance, the advisor hissed. Truth, Katie replied. You made a mistake when you attacked our ship. You thought we were weak because we don't have claws or armor, but you forgot that survivors don't need to be the strongest. They just need to outlast everything trying to kill them. The advisors conferred in their language. Finally, the dark-armored one turned to Zarketh. Your reports will be sent to the High Command. We recommend extreme caution in any future contact with Earth. This species should be classified as dangerous. More than dangerous, Zarketh said. They should be classified as apex survivors. In all our Empire's history, we have never encountered a species with this combination of physical endurance and mental fortitude. Katie was taken back to her cell, but things changed after that. The challenges continued, but with a different purpose. The Vraxians weren't trying to break her anymore. They were trying to understand her. They put her in extreme temperatures to test her tolerance. They deprived her of sleep to see how long she could function. They gave her impossible problems to solve under pressure. Every test was designed to find her limits. Katie endured all of it. Not because she enjoyed it, but because she understood that every time she survived, every time she exceeded their expectations, she was changing how the Vraxians saw humanity. She was buying safety for her brother, for the colonists, for everyone on Earth who might one day encounter the Vraxian Empire. One night, after a particularly grueling test that had lasted 36 hours without sleep, Katie sat in her cell and thought about what Zarketh had told her months ago. He had said that survival was written into her genetic code. He was right, but it was more than just genetics. It was choice. Every time she stepped into that arena, every time she faced another challenge, Katie chose to keep going. She chose to adapt. She chose to survive. That choice was what made humans dangerous, not their strength or speed, but their absolute refusal to accept defeat. They would keep coming, keep adapting, keep finding new ways to overcome obstacles. They would chase their enemies across impossible distances, survive in impossible conditions, and never ever stop. The Vraxian Empire had built itself on the belief that they were the ultimate warriors. But they had never encountered humans before. They had never faced a species that didn't fight to win battles but fought to survive wars. A species that would lose every fight and still come back for more, learning from each defeat, adapting to each challenge, until finally, they found a way to win. Katie closed her eyes and let herself rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new opportunities to show the Vraxians what humanity could do. But tonight she allowed herself to think about Danny, to hope that he was safe, to believe that somehow all of this would lead to their freedom. She didn't know that her hope was justified. She didn't know that reports about her were spreading through the Vraxian Empire, causing concern and debate. She didn't know that the High Command was having emergency meetings about humanity, arguing about whether to classify Earth as a threat or an opportunity. All Katie knew was that she would keep fighting. For Danny, for 5 months after her capture, Katie Sullivan had become something the Vraxian Empire had never seen before. She stood in the center of her cell, practicing movements that were now second nature. Every scar on her body told a story of survival. Every breath came with the confidence of someone who had faced death dozens of times and walked away. The door opened and Zarketh entered alone, which was unusual. He normally brought guards, but the commander had learned something over these months. Katie was dangerous in the arena, but she was honorable outside of it. She had never once tried to escape or attack a guard when not fighting. I have a proposal, Zarketh said without preamble. The High Command has reviewed all data from your tests. They want to offer you a position in the Vraxian military. You would train our forces in human combat techniques. Your people would receive better treatment, possibly even integration into the Empire as equals rather than subjects. Katie had expected this. She shook her head. No. You refuse without even considering the terms? I don't need to consider them. I want freedom, Commander, not just better treatment. Freedom. For me, for Danny, for every human you captured from the Meridian Dawn. Zarketh made a sound that might have been laughter. That is not possible. The Empire does not release captives. It would set a dangerous precedent. Then we have nothing to discuss. They stared at each other in silence. Finally, Zarketh spoke again. There is one possibility. The arena has a tradition, an ancient challenge that predates the Empire itself. If a captive faces the station's greatest challenge and survives, they earn their freedom and the freedom of any they choose to take with them. Katie's heart began to race. What's the challenge? The Void Reaper, Zarketh said quietly. It is a creature we captured from a dead world at the edge of our space. It has killed 37 champions from various species. Nothing has ever survived more than 6 minutes against it. And if I agree to face it, if you survive, I will personally ensure that every human on Crawl Station is released and given transport to wherever you wish to go. You have my word as a commander of the Vraxian Empire. Katie knew this could be a trap, but she also knew she had reached a crossroads. She could keep fighting in the arena forever, proving humanity's worth but never achieving freedom. Or she could risk everything on one final challenge. When? She asked. 3 days. You will be given time to prepare, food, and rest. The fight will be broadcast across the Empire. If you somehow succeed, it will change everything. For the next 3 days, Katie trained harder than ever. She ate well, slept when she could, and prepared her mind for what was coming. Lisa, Marcus, and Henry visited her cell, their faces showing worry. You don't have to do this, Lisa said. We can survive here. It's not freedom, but it's life. Danny can't survive here, Katie replied. He's 10 years old, Lisa. He needs to grow up somewhere safe, somewhere with a future. This is our only chance. What if you can't beat this thing? Marcus asked. What if it kills you? Then at least I tried. Katie smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Besides, you've all seen what I can do. Maybe I can survive 6 minutes and 1 second. The day of the fight arrived. The arena was packed beyond capacity. Vraxians stood in the aisles, crowded the entrances, anything to see this final challenge. Word had spread across the Empire. Some came hoping to see the human finally fall. Others came hoping to witness something impossible. Katie was brought to the preparation chamber. They offered her weapons this time. She selected a single blade, simple and balanced. Nothing fancy, nothing she couldn't control. Zarketh met her before she entered the arena. Whatever happens today, Katie Sullivan, know that you have already changed the Empire. We will never look at humans the same way again. Good, Katie said. Maybe that means you'll leave Earth alone. Perhaps. Zarketh stepped aside. Fight well. Katie entered the arena and the crowd roared. She walked to the center and turned in a slow circle, acknowledging them all. Then she focused on the massive door across from her, the one that would release the Void Reaper. The door opened with a grinding sound that made her teeth ache. Darkness poured out so thick it seemed solid. Then the creature emerged. The Void Reaper was nightmare made flesh. It stood 10 feet tall on 6 legs that ended in claws like scythes. Its body was covered in plates of what looked like black crystal, shifting and changing as it moved. Spines ran along its back, each one dripping with venom that hissed when it hit the arena floor. Its head had no eyes that Katie could see, but she felt its attention lock onto her immediately. The horn sounded. The Void Reaper moved with terrifying speed. Katie barely rolled aside as it struck where she had been standing. The arena floor cracked from the impact. She came up running, using her endurance advantage immediately. But the creature was smart. It didn't chase her blindly. It studied her movements, learning her patterns just as she was learning its. When Katie changed direction, it anticipated the move and cut her off. Its claws came within inches of her face. Katie struck with her blade, aiming for gaps in the armor. The blade bounced off harmlessly. The creature's armor was too strong. She needed a different strategy. 3 minutes in, Katie was breathing hard. The Void Reaper hadn't tired at all. It kept coming, relentless and patient. One of its spines grazed her arm and pain exploded through her. The venom burned like fire in her veins. Katie gritted her teeth and kept moving. The pain tried to slow her down, but she pushed through it. Pain was just information. It told her she was hurt, but it didn't have to stop her. 4 minutes. The crowd was going crazy. Katie had already survived longer than anyone expected. But surviving wasn't enough. She needed to win. The Void Reaper charged again. This time Katie didn't dodge. She ran straight at it, timing her move perfectly. At the last second, she slid under its body and slashed at the joints where its legs connected to its torso. The blade found a gap in the armor and black blood sprayed out. The creature screamed, a sound that made every person in the arena cover their ears. It spun around faster than Katie thought possible and struck her with one leg. She flew through the air and hit the arena wall hard enough to crack the metal. 5 minutes. Katie pushed herself to her feet. her ribs screaming in protest. The Void Reaper was limping now, favoring the leg she had injured. It was hurt, but so was she. The venom was spreading through her system, making her movement sluggish. She had 1 minute to think of something. 1 minute to find a way to kill this thing before it killed her. Katie looked around the arena desperately. There had to be something she could use. Then she saw it. The energy barriers that marked the arena boundaries hummed with power, the same power that had been used in some of her earlier challenges. An idea formed. Crazy, desperate, but possible. Katie ran toward the nearest barrier. The Void Reaper followed, sensing victory. Katie could feel her body failing, the venom shutting down her muscles one by one. She had seconds left. At the barrier, she turned and faced the creature. It charged, all 6 legs driving it forward with killing force. Katie waited, counting down in her head, timing it perfectly. At the last possible moment, she dove aside. The Void Reaper couldn't stop. It hit the energy barrier at full speed. Katie had seen what those barriers did to other creatures. They were designed to contain, to shock, to subdue, but the Void Reaper was covered in crystal armor that conducted energy. The barrier discharged into the creature's body. The Void Reaper convulsed as electricity ran through it. Katie grabbed her blade and, using the last of her strength, drove it into the base of the creature's skull where she had seen it bend its neck. The blade sank in. The electricity from the barrier traveled up the metal and into the creature's brain. The Void Reaper shuddered once and collapsed. Katie fell beside it, her body giving out. She had nothing left. The venom had spread too far, the injuries were too severe. She had won, but she couldn't tell if she would survive the victory. 6 minutes and 23 seconds had elapsed. The arena erupted. Some Vraxians roared in triumph at witnessing such a fight. Others stood in shocked silence. Katie Sullivan, a human with no training, no special abilities, nothing but human stubbornness and will, had defeated the Void Reaper. Zarketh was the first to reach her. He knelt beside Katie and called for medical teams. "You did it," he said quietly. "You survived." Katie's vision was fading, but she forced the words out. "Danny, the colonist—" "Your word. You have it," Zarketh replied. "I will honor the agreement." Katie closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. She woke 3 days later in a medical facility. Henry sat beside her bed, his old face creased with worry that transformed into joy when he saw her eyes open. "Welcome back," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We thought we lost you." "The others?" Katie managed to ask. "Safe, all of them." Zarketh kept his word. "The colonists are being prepared for transport." Henry's smile widened. "Danny is outside. He's been here every day, waiting for you to wake up." Tears came then, the first Katie had allowed herself since the capture. Danny burst into the room moments later and threw himself at her, crying and laughing at the same time. Katie held him as tightly as her injuries allowed, feeling whole for the first time in months. 2 weeks later, Katie stood on the bridge of a Vraxian transport ship. Zarketh had personally overseen their release, providing them